Maybe we get to do this time without the echo. Or I don't know. There might be an echo. Who knows? Okay. Let's take a look at what Jinteki has for tonight. Again, as per the usual, we're going to be commenting on some just random Jinteki Netrunner games, and of course, on the off chance, incredibly unlikely off chance, you happen to see your own game streamed here and it makes you uncomfortable that some crazy random guy on the internet is streaming your games. Just ask me, I'll add you, or just let me know, I'll add you to a list, and I won't stream your games anymore. Otherwise, sit back, enjoy. It's late. It's time to wind down. Let's have some fun watching some good Netrunner games. I really hope the volume isn't super high, though. Oh good, it's not. For some reason. Alright, first game of the night. Eddie Kim versus GameNet. GameNet is a pretty brutal NBN ID these days. And of course with the new pick and ban list, as far as the cards go, Sansan City Grid is now legal. So we'll have to see what disgusting things happen on the side of NBN tonight. Eddie Kim, of course, has a pretty obvious game plan. Get into HQ, get into R&D, trash operations. Now he has started his early turns here. We're already on turn 5, but he has started some early turns by throwing down double Liberateds, clicking each of them up twice. Which of course is going to basically break even with if you had instead just clicked for 2 credits. But you're still a click down because you got to spend a click to install the liberated accounts. Anyway, game's moving pretty quick. We saw attitude adjustment used to reveal 2 agendas. It looks like we saw Bologna and Net Quarantine. Net Quarantine is not one you see very often, or at least you used to not see it very often. Runner's base length reduced to, oh yeah, so it's a trace. It's a trace agenda. It's pretty nasty if it gets scored. Oh boy, these boys are moving quick tonight. I can barely catch up with the state of the game. Pawn Shop gets dropped by Eddie. So he clearly wants to start selling things off, which is kind of weird. I don't see a lot of things on his side of the table that he would actually want to sell right now. We see subliminal messaging being used by the Corp. That's just going to gain them a free credit every time the runner doesn't make a run, I believe. Back on Eddie's Kim's term, he decides to take a run on R&D. A lot of unresed ice, a lot of setup on both sides of the table. No agenda scored or stolen. And we see a DreamNet draw a card and a credit for Kim after stealing a Bologna. Now he does have to spend 5 credits to steal Bologna, but got into R&D for free on the no res from GameNet. And I'm sure Eddie is more than happy to just pay 5 credits to gain 3 points. Back on the side of GameNet, we see a new piece of ice on the remote. A remote that has a lot going on in it. Oh, no, we're going to undo that. That's fine. Instead, we're putting that on R&D. Perhaps a better piece of ice on R&D that could actually be rezzed should Kim attempt to run. Now, GameNet has 18 credits. So they're not poor. You have to assume they didn't res that ice on R&D because it wouldn't have done them any good. Kim is quite rich himself as well at 18 credits. Plus he has a couple bin breakers, Paperclip, and Black Orchestra. The only thing he has to really be afraid of is a Sentry. Now GameNet could be running Hydra, which I believe is a Sentry. What do we see here? Surat City Grid, that's not one I'm super familiar with. Whenever you res a card in or protecting this server, you may res another card, lowering the res cost by 2. So he sets off a chain reaction where he can res this Aryabhata tech. Oh, it's an Aryabhata trace deck. Yeah, okay. So there was a lot of goofy things all happening all at once there. Okay, so Surat City Grid res, and then that allowed him to res Area Botter for free, and then he could res Traffic Analyzer, which allows him to res another card in the server. Because it says you may res another card, but it doesn't actually specify which card. So he's using these two resed cards to res these two pieces of ice for a 2 credit discount, essentially resing them for free. So he spends 2 credits to res Surat, gets to res Arya Bada for free, reses Traffic Analyzer for nothing, obviously, reses IP Block for free, Turnpike for free, Macrophage for a single credit. Now, they forced a trace because whenever there is a successful trace... Now, where did this trace come from? We see a trace coming from something. Whenever you res a piece of ice protecting this server, trace 2. Oh my goodness. So they traced Kim 3 times. If successful, the corp gains 1 credit. Oh my goodness, that's disgusting. So, there's a lot of inner working pieces there, and I didn't exactly go and explain all of the mechanical interactions specifically, because there's just a lot of interlocking. But essentially, res Surat sets off a chain reaction that lets you res all of these cards for a 2 credit discount. Each ice that is res allows the corp to trace. And on top of that, oh my goodness, yeah, it's just kind of a bit of a chain reaction. Now, all of these cards were unres, and I'm not sure why or how. I'm sort of baffled as to what just happened here. We have a lot of unres cards. Why did these cards unres? Oh, because they use oh my goodness, that's disgusting. They use divert power to unres all of these cards that they resed for free in order to res a toll booth, also for free. In which case, whenever they want, they can res this 0 cost card here, thus triggering Surat to res all of these for free again, triggering the trace 3 times again against Eddie Kim, which also in turn gains them credit if there is a successful trace. Oh my goodness. It's madness. I wanted to relax and enjoy some Netrunner. Instead, we have a complex series of card interactions that we have to learn. Anyway, back on to Eddie Kim. He has 3 Rezekis down, no icebreakers, a lot of money coming in, another daily cast is going to help out, and Cyber Trooper Talut, which gives you a +2 strength whenever you need it, but probably more importantly, the +1 link is going to mean a lot in this matchup. Especially because Kim himself already has 1 link, so the 2 link is going to do a lot against this trace deck. It's going to make it a lot harder for NBN GameNet to have things just go their way. Now Kim runs Archives, and that's to trigger DreamNet. Because effectively, yeah, and he's not ever going to use... Well, I shouldn't say he's not ever going to use, but the main purpose of Cyber Trooper Talut here isn't for its active ability when you install a non-AI icebreaker. It's mostly just to trigger DreamNet with the 2 link. The on-install is a nice bonus. Now we still see a ton of cards going into this remote, and that's mostly, again, because GameNet wants to trigger this snowball, this domino effect of getting to res all of these things for free and initiating a trace against Kim. Now we see another, whenever there's a successful trace, gain a credit and the runner loses a credit, which is going to help them in this trace war, but still, you have to think Kim has 2 link. So what what GameNet does is they pay 3. It's kind of a hedged bet, because you're saying, okay, if I win this trace, I'm going to get this money back anyway. The trace was successful. Now, I'm not entirely sure why Kim didn't just pay the 3 credits, because that would have prevented... They lose 2 credits to the Aryabhata Tech, and then the corp gains 2 credits? I mean, there's a... Effectively, by not paying the 3 trays, why would you... I don't know, I guess maybe the credit difference there... I know, I'm not... I'm so sorry, the commentary is very twisty right now because there's all these different trace interactions happening. Effectively, by Kim choosing not to pay into the trace of 5, because GameNet chose to boost by 3, so it's a trace of 5. By not paying into the trace, Kim saves a single credit, but the corp gains 2 credits back. And so that kind of signifies that Kim is saying, I don't care how much money you have, GameNet, that single credit is still worth more to me than the money that you get back. And I think he's making that choice on each of these. He's not making the payment for each and every one of these reses that, of course, is being resed for free due to that interaction we were describing, or nearly for free. Of course, the macrophage is going to cost a single credit. Slot machine is going to cost a bit more than that. Well, no, just a single credit. But each and every one of those reses, GameNet's paying 3 and gaining 2 of that paid 3 back due to the Aryabhata techs. Now, even after all those reses, Kim still manages to get in, and they end up trashing Hippo in order to get rid of the sync BRE. So now HQ is completely open, and even though that was a really interesting interaction, even though now we have a super remote here, wow, it ends up not mattering. That's amazing. So effectively what happened is Kim made the right call, got a little bit lucky, but looked at this super remote and said, yeah, I'm not going to mess with this. And the fact of the matter is that there are only going to be, what, at maximum 3 divert powers, and we already saw 1 use here, divert power here. So the corp can't just unres these whenever they want. They have to draw a divert power, and there's a limit, right? So Kim says, okay, that's fine. Have your super remote, drain my money, I don't care. I'm just going to trash the 1 piece of ice you have on HQ, and just go into HQ, and see what we find. He did get lucky, in a sense, because I doubt GameNet expected Kim to hit both a Bologna and a Degree Mill. We don't know what these other cards are. There could have been 5 agendas in there for all we know, but let's assume that these 2 were the only agendas. Now you do have to assume Kim wants to go into HQ. Kim is always going to prioritize going into HQ. So GameNet probably should have known Kim was coming in here. Maybe should have put a second piece of ice here, shouldn't have gotten so greedy with this super server, but yeah, I mean, kudos to Kim. He made the right call. Ignored what is a very threatening server and just went straight to where he knew he could get in, and he knew where there was potential to do good. Gosh, let's get out of that game. Ugh. That was awful. Maybe we can get into something I'm a little more familiar with. Oh well, we got exposed to something new, right? I said this in one of my earlier videos, but I've been out of Netrunner for about a year, so I'm still catching up with the meta. Perhaps that is a new current meta, and it's always good to learn new things, right? Okay, so we have Chaos Theory versus Wayland Consortium. Now we're looking at a Wayland that's going to want to play a lot of transaction cards. Now Chaos Theory, it's really hard to tell precisely what a Chaos Theory is going to do, because +1 MU really doesn't tip your hand in any specific direction. Right now, the board state shows a single agenda on the side of Chaos Theory, along with 2 programs on the runner's side. Anima, very expensive to install, but once installed, an extremely powerful decoder that also forces the corp to lose a credit every time you use it to break all the pieces. Or sorry, all the subroutines on a piece of ice. Equivocation forces the corp to draw a card if the runner so chooses on a run on R&D. Now that might sound weird, like why would you do that? Wouldn't it help the corp? The reason you do that is it's a way of filtering R&D. You run R&D, you look at the top card. If you want to steal it, you go in. If you don't want to go for it, you force the corp to draw it and get to see a new card. Now we have a triple advanced piece of something in the single remote from Wayland, in addition to a 3 ice deep server. A lot of ice on the board in general, as well as an upgrade on R&D. 12 credits in the pool of Wayland, so they do have the money to threaten reses on each of these servers. Back over to Chaos Theory. The London Library is already in play from the previous turn, which makes me think it might be a bird deck, but we already see an Anima down, so maybe it's not a bird deck. It's a little hard to know, but a self-modifying code will allow Chaos Theory to pull out whatever she needs mid-run. So we'll have to see if anything fancy happens later. Now that 3 advanced card in the remote was indeed an agenda. It was the Future Is Now, which is has a fantastic effect. You basically get to search R&D for a card, any card. You don't even have to show it to the runner. It's a very nice cantrip. But we also saw Arella Salvatore resed. When an agenda is scored from the server, you may install a card from HQ ignoring all costs and place 1 advancement token on it. Now, you can clearly see now why the corp did not score this triple advanced card, because they were waiting for their next turn, where effectively they can res Arella Salvatore, score this without spending any clicks, add a card to their hand, probably install it immediately here. They're going to go for the CityWorks project. Apparently they're also going to dedication ceremony it. Now CityWorks costs meat damage to steal equal to 2 times the number of advancement tokens on it. So in one fell swoop, the corp has created a situation in which if the runner wants to come into this server and steal this CityWorks project, they have to have 10 cards in hand, or they just die. It's very unlikely that Chaos Theory is going to be able to get 10 cards in hand on the next turn. And even if they did, that's a pretty hefty cost to pay. I think the only way they could get that many cards is if they... Diesel, which would be a net of 2. Diesel, draw would get you there. But they'd have to have 2 diesels in hand. So it's very unlikely that the corp is going to go in, or sorry, that the runner is going to go in for that steal. So more than likely the corp is going to have 4 agenda points in a very short amount of time. Corp and runner are just having a friendly chat about the strengths of Arella Salvatore versus Sansan City Grid. Our corp friend here is arguing, not arguing, but displaying their opinion that Arella is a better pick. But also admitting that it's situational. Regardless, it's certainly going to benefit the corp a lot in this particular situation. We'll have to see how the runner wants to respond to this. Again, I can't really see them coming in and stealing this card, this agenda. But it puts a lot of pressure on them, right? Because they still might want to go in and attempt to trash Arella Salvatore, because Arella Salvatore is going to trigger next turn. So if the corp has another agenda in hand, they'll be able to just, right off the bat, place that agenda. It doesn't even say you have to install an agenda. It just says you may install a card from HQ. It doesn't even have to be in this server. And place an advancement token on it. In response, Chaos Theory uses London Library to bypass the 9 credit cost of Femme Fatale. Femmes the single piece of ice on HQ and runs in with a dirty laundry. Sees Audacity. Which is kind of scary, because it means that the corp has yet another card. It's going to let them fast advance an agenda without the runner being able to do much about it. In fact, if this is an agenda, they could just Audacity right now. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness, it's even worse. So, he uses Arella Salvatore to install Future Is Now, scores the Future Is Now by double advancing it, uses the Future Is Now's effect to search for a Project Atlas, which, scoring the Future Is Now, also triggers Arella Salvatore's effect, allowing them to install Project Atlas and put an advancement token on it for free, and then uses Audacity to put 2 advancement tokens on Project Atlas, bringing them up to a grand total of 7 points. All of this by turn 9. Now, of course, there are decks out there that can move even faster than that, but that is pretty dang fast, especially for a Wayland Consortium deck. Did they even get any use out of their Consortium ID? So they gained 2 more credits. One there, one there. One, no, they didn't even gain credits from that one, because that's... No, wait, these are the cards they trash. Yeah, okay, so they gained... Their ID basically read, you have 3 extra credits. Now, technically, they didn't need those 3 credits, but something that needs to be considered is, sometimes, even if you don't spend the credits, they can have an effect on the game. Because if the runner saw the corp 3 credits pour, they might have felt more comfortable to run in somewhere earlier. But if the corp can threaten to res something, the runner might be too afraid to run, and even though the corp never spends the credits to res the ice, it effectively, by having those credits, prevents the runner from running, or dissuades them from running. Regardless, very fast-paced Wayland Consortium deck. That was fun. Kind of neat to see that. Okay, next game we have Cabanesa Wu. He's going to be able to search for programs from her deck at will. And Wayland Consortium, Builder of Nations, who wants to deal meat damage the first time they... I believe this has been retconned to be the first time a runner ends an encounter with a piece of ice with 1 advancement token on it. They deal 1 meat damage to the runner. Alright, we see Wall to Wall, which is a new asset. Well, relatively new speaking. Asset for Wayland It's a fun one. It allows you to do 3 minor effects, but they all add up pretty quickly, but only as long as you have just one remote. Oh, sorry, no, I misspoke. It's not one remote, it's if you have any other rezzed assets, you only get to do one of them. Otherwise, you get to do 3. In my mind, I have that stored as one remote because typically it just means that the corp has one remote, but technically you could have other remotes just as long as you don't have another rezzed asset. Now, on the side of Kabaneza Wu, she has pulled out a Rizeki and double daily cast, so she's going to have plenty of money. Wayland decides to double advance a hostile takeover, giving a bad pub over Kabaneza Wu. Kabaneza uses her self-modifying code to pull out Gauss, which is very good breaker on the turn that you install it. Not so great afterwards, but that's fine. Euler is... oh, no, wait. Euler. That's how you say that. Euler. I had to be corrected. I used to call it Euler. Apparently it's pronounced Euler. Anyway, Euler is a lot like Gauss. It's strong the first turn you install it. Otherwise, it's okay. It's not amazing, but... Barrier Breaker, Decoder. We see a Pawn Shop hit the table, perhaps. The plan for Kabaneza is to use her ability to pull out programs from her stack, install them, and then sell them? No, that doesn't make sense, because they have to be trashed. They're not even trashed, no, they're removed from game. So, for those of you who don't know, Kabaneza can spend a click to pull a non-virus program out of her stack and install it, lowering the cost by 1. The problem is, if it's still installed by the end of her turn, she has to remove it from the game. So you couldn't sell the things you installed that way using Aesop's Pawn Shop. Oh my goodness, we see a medium. Medium was added back into the game. It makes a lot of sense in Shaper because Shaper already wants to hit R&D. So why not take one of the best R&D digging tools in the game and put it into a Shaper deck? She takes a run on R&D, hits the outermost piece of ice. Wayland decides not to res it. However, the second piece of ice, Mazvingo, is res. Has 1 advancement token on it, so it has a single end the run, but that's going to deal a meat damage, causing Kabaneza to discard a Palangi. I'm sure she'd rather install that and then sell it to Aesop's once it ran out of counters, but whatever. Gotta take that meat damage. She doesn't find any agendas in R&D, but that's the way it goes sometimes. Back over to Wayland. We see a card drawn, a credit gained, and mass commercialization is going to gain 12 credits. Sorry, that doesn't make any sense. Oh, I read that wrong. 8 credits. I was going to say there's only 4. 4 pieces of ice with advancement tokens on them. Mass commercialization, of course, gaining you 2 credits for each card with at least 1 advancement token on it. Back over to Kabaneza Wu. She makes an extra credit by selling Daily Cast. And then we see a double draw into a Sure Gamble, as well as Beth being installed. Beth is a pretty no-brainer card. She's a little bit too ubiquitous for my tastes. I don't enjoy the design of this card, but what have you, it's in the game. It would be silly not to use it. Basically just going to generate Kabaneza extra credits, draw, or clicks, depending on the money the corp has. The corp decides to install the card in the remote server. Kabaneza is going to go right on in there on her first click of the next turn. Now we see Wayland, Builder Nations, decide to pitch their hostile takeover in order to res Archer. Archer gets a full fire on all of its subroutines due to the fact that Kabaneza does not have a killer. That's going to mean 2 trashed programs and an end the run. Both Rizeki and Medium are just gone now. That's a really big swing in the Corp's favor. Cabanesa decides to perhaps angrily run HQ, where we see a Mausolus rest. All of those subroutines are going to fire. I'm a little confused, though. If Mausolus fired... Oh, okay. Euler got used to break 2 of the subroutines. The only subroutine that fired was the gain the 1 credit for the Corp. Anyway, Cabanesa runs Archives for some reason to see a face down, I think. Sees Red Planet Courier, runs into R&D, plays the same trick, breaks Mausolus, accepts the first subroutine, gets through Mazvinga, doesn't see anything useful. When it goes back over to Wayland, they install Hostile Takeover Double Advance for the score. Going to put it to 1-0 as far as agenda points go, but tempo is very much in the favor of the Corp right now. SMC hits the table for Cabanesa. It's going to allow her to pull out her killer, I'm sure, if she should need it. Or perhaps even a Palengi. It's kind of the shame, right? Cabanesa might have been a little too aggressive there. Either she should have waited for a Palengi so that she could guarantee the conversion of a killer to one of her 2 icebreaker types, or should have only ran when she had an SMC. It was questionable. Like, why run the remote when you have a medium installed, when you could just go for the R&D runs instead? Perhaps she was trying to drain the credits out of the Corp by threatening a run on server 1, but it was risky, right? It was risky to do so without a killer, and without a means to pull something out that would allow her to get out of jail, should she run into the killer. Now we see this is an kind of okay interaction. It's not like game breaking or anything, but spec work. You have to trash an installed program, but you do gain 4 credits and 2 cards, which is pretty nice. So we see this face down card is actually Harbinger. When Harbinger is trashed, you put it face down. So the interaction, of course, is that you use spec work on Harbinger to gain 4 credits and 2 cards, and then you sell it with Aesop's later for another 3 credits. It's nice. It's certainly going to get you some money and some draw. And if you're already running a pawn shop deck and you have the influence to splurge for Harbinger, why not? It's very card intensive, though. Because when you think about it, you're spending 2 clicks. 1 to install Harbinger, 1 to use spec work. And 2 cards. To get about as much as Sure Gamble. I mean, that's not bad. Because you get 4 for the spec work and then 3 for the Harbinger sell on Aesop's. But you also have to consider the spec work draws you 2 extra cards. There's kind of like 2 Sure Gambles that get you 1 credit less but 2 card draw. But it's more card intensive than Sure Gamble. 2 Sure Gambles. Is it? No, it's not, because 2 Sure Gambles would be the same card cost. We're rambling off the deep end. Alright. So on the side of Wu, we see Clot and Nanak K. It's going to be our killer. We're able to do all this program nonsense due to the Akamatsu mem chip, giving the +1 memory. We see an overwrite. An overwrite of the card from the remote. It's going to go into Archives face down. Curious. Clot hits the table for Wu on the last turn. That's going to prevent fast advance. We see another Rozeki as well as the Gauntlet? Okay. The Gauntlet's expensive, but it does give you a lot of MU. And if there's a lot of ice on HQ, you get to access extra cards. Back over on the Corp's turn, they score a hostile takeover. It's going to be the third bad publicity over to Wu. Now, I don't like this position. The Corp was in a good spot a couple turns ago when their archer set back Wu pretty heavily. Problem is, they didn't really get anything off of it except for these two other hostile takeovers. But hostile takeovers aren't free. You're giving a bad publicity over to the runner every time you do that. So now effectively Wu has had a lot of time to set back up. And the only thing the Corp has to show for it are 2 points with the penalty of giving the runner 2 more bad pub. And so I think it's kind of reached a point where it's the runner's game to lose, or I shouldn't say it's the runner's game to lose. I should just say that the ball is in the runner's court at this point. You know, we see a run on archives to see what the face down cards were. Nothing amazing. A lot more memory chips hitting the table. Okay, I think I see what's going to happen here. Really quickly, we see a City Works hit the remote, as well as a dedication ceremony used on it. It's going to put 4 advancement tokens on it, requiring 8 meat damage to steal. Now we see 2 simul chips hit the table on Wu's side, and we can guess what the game plan is now. Which is you're going to sell these breakers with Aesops and then reinstall them using simulchip effectively for free. So you gain a little bit of money, you reinstall them for free, and then because they were reinstalled, they gain their effect. Boiler effectively getting the ability to break subroutines for free, and Goss, of course, gaining an extra 3 strength. Now we see Lady hit the table, as well as an Imp. This combination Wu is not playing around. A run in HQ is going to reveal another archer. But this time Wu is ready with Nanak K. She's going to pay 10 credits, which isn't cheap, to break Archer, but she's still going to get in. Pays 7 to break Mausolus. And now she's going to get to access an extra 2 cards due to the Gauntlet. She sees Wall to Wall, trashes it, sees Biotic Labor, trashes that with Imp, and then sees a Dedication Ceremony. Pretty good catch to trash Biotic Labor from hand. But that was a little pricey. 17 credits to break through all this. She didn't use the simulchip combo that turn, so she wasn't getting the extra added benefit of either of these breakers. Corp installing more ice on R&D, afraid of the medium digs. Passes back over to Wu, who just takes 4 credits. Just needs money, effectively, at this point. Corp's going to hedge fund and preemptive action to shuffle all sorts of goodness back into their R&D. You kind of have to think at this point, the agendas are starting to come, right? HQ surely has agendas. Except, the Corp did jokingly say early on a couple turns ago that finally they are getting an agenda. So they've been agenda starved, which is why they were only able to score those 2 hostile takeovers during that window that they had when their archer trashed Cabernetis' stuff. Now, they see the second City Works project, and they double dedication ceremony it. Yeah, here's what I think you would do as Cabanesa. There's no way you can get 12 cards in hand to steal this. But it doesn't matter. You run the remote. Well, first you probably trash your Goss. Is that even going to help? No, it's not, because Goss... Well, it would save you 2 credits. I don't know, they're going to trash the Oiler instead. What? What? No! Okay. So, I think what should have happened here is... This is good. This stim hack is good. She trashed Oiler because she wants to reinstall it with Simulchip in order to get the effect. But you could run this remote and trash this agenda with Imp. Once per turn, you may remove 1 host of virus counter trash card you access at no cost. Oh, wait a minute, no. You can't. Because that's not how CityWorks project works. CityWorks project actually deals the damage on access. Oh, and it doesn't double the damage. Oh my goodness. See, this is why we need to do this. Okay, I misspoke earlier when I said that it deals meat damage equal to double the number of agenda tokens on it. It deals meat damage equal to the number of agenda tokens on it, advancement tokens, plus 2. That's still a lot. But yeah, I think the runner gets to prioritize their own triggers on their own turn. So even though you would access City Works, and it would potentially deal 8 meat damage to you, it's the runner's turn, so they should be able to still imp it. I believe is how that works. Anyway. Wu has been running into R&D several times now. Seems like she hasn't really found anything useful. Instead, the only thing we found is Punitive Counter-Strike, which she trashed with Imp. He's running into R&D again. What is she even looking for? The game's over at this point. She spent her Imp token. She can't get rid of the City Works. She doesn't have a medium. Oh, she does have a medium. I missed this. So she's accessing more cards. Trash is one of them. But it's not going to be enough, because it means she's going to see 2 new cards. It's impossible for her to score 7 points, unless this guy runs like a hostile takeover or something. Because Medium's going to see her a new card. And then the card she trashed, wall to wall, is going to let her see a new card. That's a total of 2 cards. This is not going to be enough. Yeah, no agendas. And they concede after that. Alright, well, again, I'm pretty sure the correct play would have been to run the remote and trash CityWorks with Imp. Perhaps somebody knows something about that I don't, where you're not actually allowed to do that. I don't know. But I don't think so. Or rather, I think you should be able to do that. Ugh, it's late. Chesney speaking nonsense. Okay, next game. These are at least IDs I'm a little more familiar with. Jinteki Blacktree, 1 net damage on each agenda score or steal. And Kumalo, the scum anarch himself, Mr. Trash-a-lot, trashes everything equal to the card's res or play cost. It's pretty brutal. We're already in turn 10. One agenda scored a Sting, and we saw a Virus Purge carried out by Blacktree to get rid of, seems like some data sucker tokens as well as the imp counter. It's not going to matter though, because the Knobkery engine is going to constantly generate virus tokens to put on imp. Friday Chip is also going to generate virus tokens. The engine is up. Like it or not, Kumalo effectively gets to trash for free a single card each turn. That's not even starting to consider his own ability itself. Blacktree's in a bit of trouble. Kumalo gonna go into HQ. Blacktree not even bothering to res the ice. The Knobkery engine getting that token for the imp trash. However, Kumalo hits a snare. Oh, now here's an interesting thing to consider. You can't trash a snare before it fires. So you know what? I bet you can't run City Works and trash it with imp before the meat damage hits you. Anyway, Kamala hits a snare. Pay 0 to trash it. That was after Blacktree goes ahead and triggers snare, causing 3 net damage and a tag. Kamala shakes the tag, runs back into HQ, hits a fetal AI, steals it, paying the 2 net damage and 2... pays the 2 net damage and the 2 credits, but it doesn't matter, it's all for naught. Blacktree hits him with the old Jinteki special of, just kidding, I actually wanted you to steal all of my agendas. It scores a Philonic Entanglement, dealing 3 net damage in total, 1 due to the Blacktree ID, and 2 more due to the agendas that Kamala had already stolen, dealing a total of 3 net damage, more than Kamala could handle. Kamala is flatlined due to net damage. Yeah, I'm gonna have to remember that. You can't imp City Works. It's not the first time I've made a mistake in my commentary, and I apologize. It's probably not gonna be the last. But hey, the more you learn, right? Okay, next game, Kamala versus GameNet. GameNet spends their first turn with a Ice, gain a credit. Kamala double draws, plays Sure Gamble, takes a credit of their own, discarding Black Orchestra. In a strange maneuver, GameNet decides to triple click for credits. Now, for those of you who don't know, the proper way to play against Kamalo, proper in quotes, right? Proper way to play against Kamalo is you ice up the centrals. You just keep him out of the centrals, even if you lose an agenda, or maybe even an agenda or 2 in the process. If you can keep Kamalo out of the centrals, it shuts his whole system down. Typically. Most Kamalo decks, anyway. So that might be what GameNet is trying to do here. They're just trying to play slow, ice everything up, make sure they have the money to actually res this stuff. And even though Kamalo is getting set up over here, if GameNet can keep Kamalo out of the central servers, they're going to be fine. Now, the reason you need to keep Kamalo out of the central servers is several. First, if you can't make a successful run, then Knobkri isn't going to generate virus tokens. If Knobkri isn't generating virus tokens, you're not getting virus tokens on Imp. If you're not getting virus tokens on Imp, you're not getting to trash things, and if you're not getting to trash things, the Friday chip isn't getting tokens. In addition to the fact that the data suckers that he inevitably will put down are not getting tokens. Also, there's no guarantee that the Kamalo will be running the virus breakers, but the virus breakers also require successful runs to generate virus tokens. So you can see why keeping Kamalo out of your servers is the best way to shut him down. That being said, we do see 2 cards in the remote. One of them is Rashida. Rashida is used, so it's going to be 3 credits and 3 cards for the Corp. Now we see a super server being built up here as a new card goes into the remote and a new piece of ice to protect it. Click for a credit and a discard of the extra card. Will that be the right call? Or will it be a scenario where the centrals are too thin? We'll have to wait and see. Here's the first data sucker, and here's the problem, right? We see a hippo hit the table. So now already, GameNet is in a tough spot. Because if they res this piece of ice that's protecting HQ, Kamala's just going to trash it with a hippo. Now GameNet does decide that it's worth it, so they res the ice. It is going to be a sync BRE. Sync is going to give the runner a tag, and if the second trace is successful, they won't access cards, or rather they access 1 fewer card. It's an expensive piece of ice to break, but I'm sure Kamalo is going to go ahead and do it. Yeah, he does. Instant installs the MK Ultra, pays a whopping 9 credits to break, but then trashes Hippo to get rid of that piece of ice. Accesses hard-hitting news from HQ. I'm a little surprised Kamalo didn't trash that by spending 3 credits with his ID ability, but maybe he had used that ability earlier. I don't think he did. Yeah, but for whatever reason, he decides to keep the hard-hitting news around. Perhaps it's because he has way more credits than the Corp right now, and he's not afraid of the hard-hitting news. Anyway, back over to the Corp, they decide to install immediately another piece of ice on HQ. It went back over to Kamalo, who did the lib account thing. And then on the Corp's next turn, they put yet another piece of ice on this remote, as well as another piece of ice on R&D and an upgrade. The Kamalo is just going to go right back into HQ. He's a little bit like Eddie Kim in that regard. He wants to be in HQ because he can trash anything, right, that has a res or play cost. Now, Turnpike has a nice interaction with GameNet because Turnpike has the on encounter, forcing the Corp to lose, the runner to lose a credit, which gains GameNet a credit, effectively letting them res Turnpike for a single credit. And each and every time the runner runs through that server, they're getting an extra credit from their ID. So effectively, they res this Turnpike for free. Trying to figure out whether or not Kamalo trashed something there. I didn't quite catch it. Kamalo installing a second Friday chip. Not sure if you need another one. But they're one of those cards that builds up tokens the longer you have it on the table, so maybe that is the right call. Dirty Laundries into HQ. Oop, pardon me. We see Parasite hit the Turnpike on HQ, just another tool to thin the ice on HQ. It's very clear that this Kamalo just wants to get into HQ. That's all they want. They don't care about the super remote. They don't care about, you know, R&D, archives. As long as they can thin the ice on HQ and keep getting in there, they're happy. In response, the Corp understands this, has quite a bit of ice in their deck in general. We see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 pieces of ice on the table. 2 more. The Kamalo is already trashed. That's 11 pieces of ice. It's not a small number of ice for a Corp. And perhaps that's why they were so confident to put 4 pieces of ice over here. Because they knew their deck had plenty of ice to deal with the trashing nonsense that Kamala brings to the game. Attitude adjustment, allowing the Corp to shuffle a Bologna into R&D and gain 2 credits from it. And a piece of something installed into the remote. Nothing rezzed. And you have to think, this Corp is very poor right now. And it's possible that they're going to use that combo that we saw earlier, that domino effect that lets them res. Yeah, that's what we're going to see. Okay, so the Surat grid is rezzed, followed by the Aryabhata tech, followed by the traffic analyzer. This is the exact same combo that we saw earlier. Looks like he res things in the wrong order. But we're going to see that domino effect again, right? Where 2 credits are spent to res Surat. All the pieces are here, ready and prepped to go. Free res on IP block, and that's going to initiate the trace. Trace 2. Freedom has no natural link, so this is going to be 2 credits that Freedom has to spend if they want to prevent the Corp from gaining a credit and the runner from losing a credit. Wisely, Kamalo decides to pay into that trace because also the runner is in the middle of a run, which means that GameNet would cause the Corp to gain another credit if this traffic analyzer trace was successful. We see a res on another IP block. The Corp decides to raise this trace strength to 3. Kamalo doesn't pay for it. And so the Aryabhata tech fires. It's gaining GameNet money one way or the other. Either Kamalo pays into it or GameNet boosts the strength a little bit and Kamalo doesn't pay into it, and then GameNet just gains money and the runner loses a credit anyway. It's rough. It's a no-win situation for the runner for sure. Anyway, GameNet decides to go ahead and res the toll booth at a 2 credit discount. So that's interesting. The Corp had 5 credits at the beginning of this. And now, for a single credit, when it's all said and done, they res 3 cards in a remote and 4 pieces of ice. And we know they have divert power. So they're just going to divert power on all of this stuff and do it again when it comes to be their turn. Kamala does get into HQ and sees a boom. He's going to go ahead and trash that. Oh, hey, Jinglis. Favorite runner is definitely, hands down, Adam. I can't get enough of Adam. As far as Corp goes, I'd have to say Black Tree. Looks like Kamala's coming back into R&D and sees a macrophage. The macrophage is relevant in this matchup just due to the number of viruses that Kamala uses. A lot of times that trace isn't necessarily the most important thing, although the combination with Aryabhata Tech and macrophage is not irrelevant, because a lot of times runners will just let all the traces fire. But if they do that, they're instantly going to lose 4 credits. And the Corp is going to gain 4. That's alright, Jinglis. It's a pretty fun game. It took me a while to get familiar with everything, but the community is pretty good, and you just jump in and start playing, and you'll figure it out eventually. Adam's a lot of fun just because of his directives, and trying to remember them all at first is a little complicated, but they become like natural over time, I guess is how I'd describe it. What else is going on here? New car goes into a remote. Wouldn't be all that surprising if that was an agenda, especially with all the ice that has been res on the remote at this point. And then we do see the divert power, which is going to let that domino effect off the back of Surat City Grid to be able to use again whenever the Corp needs it. Preferably mid-run so that the game net ID can fire. Yeah, unfortunately, I used to meet with a group and play weekly, but COVID prevented that. So, gosh, it's been like a year since I've met in person and played with anyone. I definitely understand and sympathize about the COVID lockdown. One day we shall be free of the pandemic. On that day, we will all celebrate. Till then, we'll just hang in there. Alright, so 4 tags hit Kumalo from the hard-hitting news played earlier. Kumalo doesn't try to shake them. It's probably wise. Corp doesn't have a ton of money, but they are in boom threatening range, right? Or at least they were. They're not quite there yet now. Just as we suspected, they used the domino effect to res more ice, triggering their traffic analyzer. And effectively, the Corp is just going to get paid all of that money back even before anything has really even happened in the run. So even though Kumalo's getting those 9 credits for free, they're all just going to get drained. Oh, I misspoke. No, because Traffic Analyzer only fires when you res a piece of ice in the server. So there isn't going to be a trace after that first piece of ice was resed here. So Kumalo will get to keep the 7 credits. However, we do see all of the ice basically on the table, aside from the one on archives. All up and ready to go now. And the Corp actually made money off of it by the time the madness has concluded. Encounters toll booth. By the time they get to Kumalo, by the time Kumalo gets to toll booth and pays for the 3 credit on encounter cost, they're left with a single credit to somehow get through it. I don't see exactly how they're going to. Oh, they use Trickster Taka credits. Oh, and lower the strength with Data Sucker. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So they were able to get through Toll Booth in spite of the 5 strength. Gets into HQ and sees another divert power. He's going to go ahead and trash that. That's a wise thing to do. You definitely just don't want more divert powers on the table right now. Effectively allowing the Corp to de-res everything and do all of that trace, de-res, gain money, force the Corp to lose money nonsense. However, apparently the Corp had yet another divert power in hand, so they're going to get to do it anyway. They're going to de-res all of the ice on this server, effectively setting up the combo again for the future. Now they res this Turnpike because technically divert power allows you to res another card, reducing the cost per the number of cards that were de-resed. However, that is merely a secondary effect compared to their primary goal of de-resing everything to allow the combo to happen again. Back over to Kumalo, Paladin Poemo hits the table after it looks like the Corp probably, I didn't catch it, but the Corp probably trashed the other Poemu and Trickster Taka due to the fact that the runner is tagged. Of course, Corp's being allowed to trash any runner resource for 2 credits and a click if the runner is tagged. The runner decides to check the remote that GameNet created. It was a Rashida. I'm sure Kumalo's happy to at least get that off the table and then not give the Corp yet another ability to gain money and card draw. But it's still not looking good for Kumalo. No agendas have been scored, but I don't think GameNet is really trying to score agendas right now. And they're not throwing them in archives either. They're just running this combo over and over again. This Traffic Analyzer, Surat City Grid, Aryabhata Tech combo, which is just generating them money over and over again. And here we see the boom, probably. Yeah. So the idea behind that was to get enough money for boom and then just end the game based off the tags the runner had earlier from hard-hitting news. So overall, that was more or less the situation that we were discussing earlier about keeping Kumalo out of the central servers. Of course, this particular GameNet strategy didn't need to do that so vigilantly as other corps may need to do. There was only 2 ice on the main centrals, and archives only had the single ice. It didn't matter, though, because the main plan, of course, was always to build up this remote in order to use this combo. Khumalo just couldn't get in here to trash all of this and threaten the centrals at the same time. Khumalo's probably never going to win this matchup, would be my guess. But not much to say. That's a pretty nasty combo. It's the second time we've seen it tonight. It must be one of the newer popular ones. Anyway, we'll jump into a new game here. We see Polana Foods. Another Chaos Theory. Chaos Theory seems like she's been popular lately. Not sure why. Anyway, things moving fast. An IPO from Polana. Double ice, 1 on HQ, 1 on R&D. On the side of the runner, we see the Artist, which is a pseudo Kate McCaffrey / Magnum Opus replacement from the original core set. A little bit more balanced because you can only use each ability on it once per turn. Corp is moving fast. We see 2 pieces of ice on a remote, as well as an advanced card in that remote, and a mystery upgrade. Now, it's also possible that the advanced card is an upgrade, I suppose, but you would expect that this is an agenda and an upgrade next to it. Chaos Theory decides to ignore the remote and go straight into HQ with a legwork. We see Eli. Unfortunately, it's too late in the round for Chaos Theory to decide to double-click through Eli, so instead she installs Paperclip. By using self-modifying code, is going to get through Eli, hits 3 cards in HQ, sees a Cyberdeck suite. She goes ahead and trashes that. Sees an NGO front, very nice catch. Trashes that. And a Biovault. Trashes that as well. That was expensive. Those are a lot of annoying tools that Polana isn't going to have now. Back at Polana's side, we see a double advance on the advanced card, as well as another upgrade put in the server. Again, presumably an upgrade. You can never be 100% certain, since cards like Biovault can be advanced. Now, Lacosta Grid is rezzed. It's going to get free advancement tokens on cards inside the remote server, but only, of course, when the corp's turn begins. That's going to allow them to score a Nisei. That Nisei token is going to be frustrating to deal with as the runner. Back on the runner's side, we see a double draw. Daily cast. Chaos Theory is just getting set up here. She did contest HQ with the legwork. That legwork seemed maybe a little early. I've heard it said by people who are much better than the game and at the game than me, saying you only need 1 legwork. And all you need to do is you need to hold on to it till the perfect moment. And typically, that moment is later in the game when the corp has been forced to stockpile agendas into HQ. And that's when you potentially want to see that legwork come out. And that's why they say you only need 1 legwork. Now, I'm not going to say that it was wrong for Chaos Theory to have used that legwork early. She did get rid of the NGO front, which would have been annoying, and the Biovault. The Cyberdex Virus Suite, not really important, or probably not important, unless she uses Palangi. We don't see any Palangis in the discard yet, so we can't know whether or not that's the case. So I'm not saying she didn't get anything from this legwork. I just wonder if maybe it was too early. Because she had to spend 2 credits to use the SMC, 4 credits to install Paperclip, and 5 credits to trash all those cards. which is a total of 11 credits. Now she is just going straight back into HQ, so maybe this is the plan all along. It's to ignore the remote and just go into HQ. She knifes Eli, which I'm sure she's very happy to do. That's going to get rid of kind of just an annoying piece of ice in front of HQ. She only has to pay a credit extra to do that, since she was going to be breaking those subroutines anyway. Now we see another piece of ice on the remote, as well as a new card installed in that remote, which makes me think that the Corp has decided, you know what, I'm not going to protect HQ, I'm just going to put the cards that are important to me in the server, in the remote server, and I'm going to protect them with the ice that are already on that server. Which kind of lends you to think that there is an agenda among one of these two face-down cards. Back over to Chaos Theory, even though there's an open HQ, we just see more setup. An R&D interface hits the table, as well as the third Rizeki. Polana, respecting the R&D interface, puts another piece of ice on R&D. Chaos Theory, meanwhile, puts down a Palongi, so there is that Palongi that we were talking about earlier, as well as a Nanak K. It's going to let her rather cover 2 of the 3 different types of potential ice, and Palongi will be able to convert any code gate she encounters to either sentry or barrier, whichever would benefit her more. Instead, she runs, hits the outermost piece of ice, and it is an enigma, which is that code gate scenario, so she does indeed paint it with Palongi, turning it into a sentry, and breaks it for 2 credits with Nanak K. Next piece of ice is a macrophage, so she has to decide whether she wants to contest the macrophage traces, or just let them fire. Macrophage is going to get rid of her Palongi. It's not just going to get rid of it, it's also going to potentially trash it and remove it from the game. We're looking at a trace 4. Oh, the runner left the game. That's interesting. Normally I don't like to talk in chat when I'm commenting on a game, but I think in this case we will, just because this guy doesn't... I think the other guy probably rage quit when he ran into that macrophage. I think that might have been what happened. I'm not sure I understand why. The macrophage is a little frustrating, sure, but it's not that bad. Anyway, we'll go over really quickly kind of what happened here. Effectively, we have this first subroutine, right? It's going to purge counters. Chaos Theory has to decide whether she wants to contest the Trace 4. The Corp didn't boost the Trace strength. But when you look at all of these other subroutines, Trace 3, trash a virus, Trace 2, remove a virus from the game, it's more than likely not economical or valuable for Chaos Theory to contest these traces. So Macrophage effectively just read, trash Palongi, remove it from the game. Which sucks, yeah. But she already got to use the Palongi on the Enigma. And I kind of feel like, you could have just sacrificed the Palongi, removed it from game, and just gone on through the server. Because this last Trace 1 to end the run, she could easily pay into that one. Because I doubt the Corp is going to boost that. But, I could at least understand the frustration behind it. Alright, new game. Fresh Fresh table. Looks like the players are deciding whether or not they want to keep the hand or not. And nice. You don't always get to see a game right from the beginning, so this will be fun. So we have Mushinoshin. Put on the table by Nisei, the next division. Sorry, the next generation. Oh, this is an interesting one. Whenever you and the runner reveal secretly spent credits, gain 1 credit. It effectively means every time you play a side game, you gain a credit. Of course, Kabanesa Wu, we already saw her earlier in the evening. A single click is going to allow her to search her stack for a program, with a caveat that it has to be removed from the game if it remains installed until the end of her turn. SMC is going to allow Kabanesa to pull out an early Rizeki, followed by daily cast. Simulchip plays into that combo that we were discussing earlier. Now, Jinteki next generation did not score this quadruple advance card. Doesn't mean it's not an agenda, just means they haven't scored it. There's all sorts of tricks and traps that a Jinteki player gains advantage from by keeping an advanced card on the table, even sometimes an advanced agenda. A lot of setup happening on both sides. We see 2 ice deep on both R&D and HQ from the Corp. 3rd ice on R&D. Probably wise against Shaper. Shaper traditionally focuses on R&D to begin with. More setup from Kabanesa. This is probably the same Aesop's shop pawn deck that we saw from earlier. More advancement tokens. Wait, what happened here? Oh, we see back channels. Whoa. So back channels gains you extra money when you advance it effectively. So we see 18 credits coming back to the Jinteki player, followed by an install in the remote plus a double advance. We do see the medium hit the table from Kabanesa. She's still just setting up. Oh, interesting. We also see the clock go in the bin. Simulchip is going to allow her to pull that out at light speed if she needs to, if she suspects that the Corp is trying to fast advance. Although I don't know how much fast advance you see out of a next generation Nisei. Would you see that the card in the remote was an Obokata protocol? Nisei probably very comfortable trying to score that behind a single iced remote simply by nature of the fact that Obokata costs 4 net damage to even steal in the first place. Kabanesa content to just continue setting up. Another install double advance in that remote from our Corp. And Kabanesa decides it's finally time to stop setting up. She's going to pull the trigger, go straight into R&D. She sees a Malinzi. It's interesting that Malinzi is being used here. Typically, Anansi is just considered straight up to be a better piece of ice. And so it's a Sentry, Code Gate, Sentry broken by Nana K, the 2 Code Gates broken by Euler. And she's gonna steal a Future Perfect off the top of R&D, correctly guesses the side game, goes into HQ immediately after that, sees another Mind Game and another I-Key, is able to get through both of those with Euler. Goes back over to our Corp, who ices up Archives, which is a little interesting. Does that mean there's agendas in there? Or is that simply just another defensive precaution? Mushinoshin triple advances a new card in a remote, as well as being presented with the original card in the 1 ice remote with 3 advancement tokens on it. Kabanesa decides to continue, or rather to take a turn off, make a little money, play daily casts. More ice coming onto R&D by the Corp. Very much respecting the medium digs. And the Gauntlet being played by Cabanesa, as stated earlier, rather expensive, but it certainly gives you a lot of MU and extra accesses onto HQ. It's kind of like a free legwork. In fact, the Corp putting another piece of ice there, yeah, that's rough, because now Cabanesa has to break yet another piece of ice, but she also gets to access another card. Now, using that combo we talked about earlier, where she sold the Oiler with Aesop's Pawn Shop, uses a Simul Chip to reinstall it, so now Oiler is once again breaking subroutines for free. Cabanesa going to access a lot of cards here, 4 if I'm not mistaken. Sees back channel, Mushin Noshin. She trashes the Mushin Noshin with Imp, steals a dedicated neural net. What was the other card they access? Back channels, Mushin Noshin. Oh, Archive Memories. That's interesting. Anyway, goes straight into R&D after that. It's gonna go right back in. I mean, why not? She's breaking all of these code gates, only paying, what, a credit? Yeah, a single credit to boost Oiler's strength to 3 for I-Key. Pays 2 credits to break Mind Game. Melinzi's a little more expensive, though. But you have to think Nana K gains more strength the more ice is on R&D. So Nana K is actually gaining, gosh, 4 strength. Putting it right in line with Melinzi's strength anyway. So Nana K breaks Melinzi for 3 credits. That's kind of nuts. Anyway, just to be safe, Wu also checks archives, sees no agendas in there. Goes back over to the Corp, who double draws and plays preemptive action to shuffle Mushin Noshin. Oh, another Mushin Noshin. My eyes were passing over it. So two Mushin Noshins and a medical research fundraiser. So just more money. More money and more tricks. Both players are poor after that. But you have to think both players were also very set up after that. We have a lot of Rezzed Ice on the table from Nisei. A lot of installed programs all ready to go from Wu. Nisei decides to purge virus tokens to get rid of the medium counters, as well as the imp counter. Not a bad choice, necessarily. Archive Memories is going to pull out yet another Mushin Noshin from the bin, allowing Nisei to put another new card in a new remote, 3 advancement tokens on it. Who knows what that even is? Cabanesa rolling in the dough right now. She's making 5 credits a turn for free between Rizeki and Aesop's selling things. On top of the fact that she just spent the last several turns just clicking for more credits. Corp Archives uses Archive Memories to add Mushin Noshin into their hand again. They really like the mind games. Of course, Mushin Noshin meaning mind, no mind, I think is what the translation is. Anyway, Wu, deciding not to have any of it, goes right into HQ, gets lucky, hits Mushin Noshin. Well, I shouldn't even say gets lucky. She accesses a ton of cards from HQ because of the gauntlet. So accesses Mushin Noshin and trashes it with Imp. Goes into R&D, hits a Cerebral Overrider, goes ahead and trashes it for free. Corp makes kind of a questionable choice. Decides to purge virus tokens again. The problem is they're not getting any forward tempo from that. I mean, I suppose they're getting rid of the Imp token, We do see back channels being used to gain the Corp 15 credits, so they do have funds now. But it's a very common scenario, or rather, it's a very common piece of the game, that if both sides have infinite money, the runner will win. Because effectively, the runner's money allows them to cancel the effects of the Corp. So I don't think Cabanesa really cares that the Corp has money, because Cabanesa has so much money that she'll just be able to get in here and do whatever she wants to do. Another Mushin Noshin card creates another mystery server. I think that happened about a turn ago. And then on this current turn, the Corp decides to put yet more ice on RD and HQ. Cabanesa fearlessly goes into HQ, says, I don't care. She uses the Simulchip combo to install Euler. Euler's going to, of course, break all of this very cheaply. I think she's getting in for a total of 5 credits for the whole server. Plus she's accessing 4 extra cards when she does that. She does hit a snare. And the Corp does decide to activate that snare. Cabanesa shakes one of the tags. Why did she have... Did she hit 2 snares? Hold on. The screen's getting a little hard to keep track of now. No, just the 1 snare. Why does she still have a tag? We'll worry about that later. She's going straight into R&D now. Sees... We have to zoom out. The screen keeps changing because there's so many cards on the table. Okay, there we go. Anyway, is going into R&D. Didn't see any agendas, but is going right back in again. Getting those medium tokens, as well as seeing a new card with each run. She decides to go in for a 3rd time. She's playing very recklessly. She has no cards in hand. If she hits a snare, it's over. We only see 1 snare in the bin. But luck seems to be on her side. She's still tagged, though. So the Corp takes advantage of that and trashes her Aesops. I think this might be the story of a runner who tried to burn too quickly and a little too bright. Because Cabanesa is a little bit out of steam now. She's going right back into R&D. This is after the Corp makes back a lot of their money off of yet another back channels. Run on R&D going to be a little different this time, as Engram Flush actually doesn't do anything because Wu has no cards in hand. So she doesn't need to break that. Euler is used to break the net damage aspect of Aiki, but not the side game aspect, which means each time the players play that side game, Nisei gains a credit. Interestingly, the runner decides to go ahead and play the side game on Mind Game, which is a little questionable. If you didn't know, Mind Game is a side game in which if the runner loses the side game, the corp gets to redirect the runner to wherever they won. The runner lost the game, the corp redirected them to server 2, and Wu decided to jack out. Wu runs then on HQ, runs into the Mind Game, they play yet another side game, she loses, corp redirects her to server 2, and she jacks out again. It's questionable that she's not breaking the Mind Game. I feel like if you're going to go that deep into a server, you just break the Mind Game. I think. I mean, where'd her oiler go? Did she didn't sell it, did she? Actually, now that I see that, I'm not sure. She could have painted it with Palangi, though. Looks like she sold the Goss as well. Why did she sell the Goss? I don't know. I must have missed that. The game was previously moving pretty quickly. I mean, at one point she lost a Goss due to net damage, but that was a Goss in her hand, not the one she had installed. I'm not sure how she lost the Goss that was installed. Oh no, it was never installed in this game. I think that's what it is. Okay, let's get back on track here. Okay, Oiler comes out of Wu's hands to do yet another attempt on R&D. Does see another neural net. Unfortunately, that's going to be only a single point. She does decide to run archives. Doesn't see any agendas. Where are the agendas? Corp goes ahead and takes a turn to purge virus counters. Now is a pretty decent time to do that. The runner is kind of stuck. That purge causes her to lose all of those medium tokens. So another run on R&D isn't going to reveal anything interesting. Because she's already seen the top, what, 4 cards? 1, 2... Yeah. And the corp would have drawn one of them. So she already knows what the top 3... Well, hang on. No. Alright, sorry about that. Okay, what do we miss here? Oh, we missed the future perfect score. Anyway, it is curious as to where exactly the agendas are in all of this. The future perfect definitely helps explain some of that, but either the agendas are somehow in HQ, or they're at the very bottom of R&D. Because you would assume if this card was an agenda, the Corp just would have scored it by now. It's probably a trap or something, maybe a cerebral overrider, due to the fact that the Corp was trying to redirect the runner into this server. Voter intimidation is going to allow them to play another side game. The runner loses. The Corp decides to trash Beth, Kilray, and Chang. The runner now going back into R&D. This is just kind of like, the way to put it is, this is just kind of like a cyclical pattern at this point. The general strategy from Wu is she's just trying to get into R&D to build up those medium counters, to see the cards, as many cards from R&D as she can. It's a safe bet that HQ doesn't have any agendas in it, or it's not a guaranteed bet, but based on the behavior of the Corp, it doesn't seem like HQ actually has agendas in it. Otherwise, probably the Corp would have tried to score them. We see a double draw from the Corp, probably trying to get out of that R&D lock that they're afraid of. Preemptive action, going to shuffle in a snare and 2 cerebral overriders. Good choice. A single snare would kill Wu at this point. And now Wu's going to check HQ to kind of eliminate the possibility of what we discussed earlier, where it's very likely that the agendas are not in HQ, but if they are, you might as well go in and check, especially after that double draw. So she runs HQ, unfortunately loses the mind game, gets redirected. And actually, I think she's kind of happy to play the mind game. Oh, I didn't even catch this. I should have realized this from earlier. Mind game forces the runner to add 1 installed card to the bottom of their stack if they jack out when losing a mind game. Kabadesa Wu is purposefully using that effect from Mind Game in order to add cards back from her installed cards, her set of installed cards, into her deck so that she can reinstall them. Things like Palangi, so that she gets those virus tokens back. Things like Euler, so that she gets that install effect back. That's actually a really interesting way of using Mind Game. You're taking an effect that the Corp generally has on there, assuming it's going to be a penalty to the runner, and you're turning it into a benefit for yourself. Now this time she did manage to get through HQ, but Jack's out? I wasn't sure what happened. They said oops, but then they said never mind. I'm not sure what happened. They're going to decide to contest the remote here. They do break engram, and in the remote they see a cerebral overrider. The Corp uses cerebral overrider to do 2 net damage, sorry, brain damage, causing Kabadesa to trash yet another 2 cards. But Kabadesa is still using that mind game interaction to add more cards to her deck so that she can draw them, so that she can potentially withstand yet another Cerebral Overrider play. That's the runner having some choice words to say to the corp after another Mushi Noshin adds a triple advance card into the remote. This is fascinating, because effectively what happens is either Cabanesa gets to add more cards to her deck, or she gets through for free. However, I think these two know each other. I think they're having some friendly banter between each other. It looks like the corp decided to concede. So I think we have to assume that there was an agenda in HQ. Because of the gauntlet, Cabanesa is going to access 5 cards from HQ. There's only 4 cards in HQ, so effectively sweeps the entirety of HQ. And if there was an agenda in there that the corp knew they couldn't protect, they just went ahead and conceded. I think is how that worked. Man, that was rough. That was just kind of a long drawn out game. What turn were we on? Turn 29. Yeah, most games end before turn 20, and even then you would consider a 20 turn game to be a long one. Good grief. Those Rozekis were pulling a lot of weight in this game. I'm sure Cabanesa would have much rather had that third Rozeki installed. Gauntlet surprisingly also pulled a lot of weight in this. It's a very expensive console to install, but the number of HQ runs that Cabanesa was able to pull off, accessing multiple cards with the gauntlet, certainly made it worth it. Now, it was a little risky against a Jinteki deck. You have to think, if you hit, like, if you get really unlucky, right, and you hit 2 snares on the multi-access, you potentially could just get flatline. But she made it work. Grueling, a very grueling game, but still fun nonetheless. Okay, looks like we're jumping into one halfway through. Turn 11. We see Polana, which is, of course, corp that's going to get rich just by playing the game. And Lat, a very underutilized shaper, who tries to match the number of cards in hand that the corp has so that they can get a free draw. What do we have on Lat's side of the table? We see a Taboki? Sorry, Takobi, not Taboki. Takobi. A nice little trick of a program that's going to boost strength of your breaker. The more you break ice. And Golo, a very strong shaper breaker in general. Rozeki seem to be very popular lately. Or, I say... pardon me. When I say lately, I mean like within the last year since Rozeki was released, but in the current state of the Netrunner community, that is lately. We see a Because I Can run. So Lat may be feeling not confident to come in here and trash these cards. Maybe doesn't want to spend the money to trash the Lacosta. He's going to make a run on the remote where, upon a successful run, all the cards in the remote are shuffled into R&D. Unfortunately for him, a border control keeps him out. Oh, is that it? Wow, that was a quick one. Or rather, quick from our perspective. Of course, turn 12 is about fairly normal for a Netrunner game, I suppose. Let's see if we can figure out what Lat was trying to do here. Kind of seems like a, this seems like a weird Shaper deck. I'm struggling to find a ton of synergy here. This might have just been a deck that the runner threw together just for fun. I'm seeing good Shaper cards here, but not. I don't see a picture, right? Like I don't see a strategy. Just kind of random cards here. We could say the same thing for Polana, but that at least all of Polana's cards get the money, right? And Border Control is just a good piece of ice in general. Lacosta becoming a very popular. I almost don't want to call it a fast advance option, even though that's what it is. It's effectively a fast advance option. But oh well. I think that's where we're gonna call it for the night. The games are slowing down anyway. If you're still watching at this point, thank you as always for tuning in. Hope you had at least a little bit of fun this late at night in the wee hours. Regardless, take care out there, and maybe I'll see you again in the future. Later.